math coder for the NSA for 30.
Hello?
Mr. Binney?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Yes,
did you try the other phone?
I did. And I actually tried the landline. I believe it was yesterday. To try to just call to confirm, and I got that message. Also, it basically just goes right to voicemail and says that the mailbox is currently full.
Yeah, right. There's something wrong with our phone. That's I think it's a bad tap by the FBI, but
Yeah.
What can I say?
Being that you're mentioning that, I don't want to sound paranoid or anything, but I always notice on my cell phone when I call someone, I always somewhere, like usually early, I just hear these 3 beeps. It just goes boop boop boop, like all the time, like every time. And I'm just always wondering what that is. So let me just quickly read a bit about Mr. William Binney. This, I believe, is the 3rd time that I'm interviewing with you.
It's been a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, the second time we did it with Dr. Robert Duncan, who was like a big fan of yours. So it was the 2 of you. The last time it had to be at least like a year ago. So you spent in excess of 36 years with the National Security Agency as a technical director. You and Kurt Wiebe developed, was it you and Kurt Wiebe that developed the revolutionary information processing system called Thin Thread, or was that just yourself?
Well, it was Ed Loomis and me. Kurt joined us late after that was well along the way, but he joined us later on, so he was part of it too.
Okay, and so, right, you developed... to process all of the information, the NSA is like collecting, and it was called Thin Thread, and it could have detected and prevented 9/11, but the NSA officials
and just about every other attack that's ever been that's ever happened, even before 9/11,
right,
and since, of course.
And the NSA officials ignored the program in favor of a program called Trailblazer that not only ended in total failure, but cost taxpayers billions of dollars. And loss of life. Right.
Because in the meantime, they failed to detect the attacks coming.
Say that again?
And it also is the problem that also created the circumstances where people lost their lives because of terrorist attack.
Right.
Because they weren't being detected in advance.
Exactly. And so, and you went through the chain of command with your concerns about this Thin Thread, or the fact that they actually chose the Trailblazer. And it was ignored.
Yeah, we use the proper channels. Yeah, like Senator Feinstein said we should, and that's why they attacked us, of course.
Right. And okay, let me see. And then you and Kurt Wiebe faced harsh retaliation from the NSA. I mean, I know you're. I don't know if you're tired of like telling these same stories over and over again, because since I interviewed you, the first time I interviewed you was after you were at the Left Forum, which is coming up not this weekend but the following weekend, where you spoke at the Left Forum, and that was what was that, 2013 or so?
Yeah, I think it was. I thought it was 14, but
okay,
2014.
And you've been doing a lot of traveling since then, and you're getting like a really great reception from.
Yes, once people learn the truth, they get over. They actually are saying, quite frankly, what can we do to stop this stuff?
Exactly.
So,
okay, so the NSA is collecting data on everyone, and you left the NSA because it's in violation of the Constitution. I mean, like, they're doing it without a warrant.
Plus any number of laws, too.
Right.
You know, the Pen Register Law, the Electronic Privacy Act, Electronic Security Act, all the laws covering FCC regulations covering the telecoms and the ISPs. So all that, too.
Right. And that was...
I mean, that's why the Second Circuit Court of Appeals here last year ruled their secret interpretation of Section 215 illegal. They haven't exposed the content collection that they've been doing yet. But when they do that, I mean, it'll be, you know, unconstitutional also. So, I mean, it's obvious they've been keeping it secret simply because it's been illegal and unconstitutional. And all of that's grounds for impeachment and indictment.
The thing, you know, I've been listening, you know, to a bunch of your interviews, and what I heard you say that, you know, I mean, the more this stuff goes on, and the more they try to cover it up, and they try to make, you know, so-called laws like retroactive so that they can either classify something or declassify something, you know, whatever suits them in order to
hide their criminality. Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on. It's like they're going to look like complete. I mean, they are looking like complete crazy people. Like
no, they're criminals, and they're covering it up. That's all.
You know, right? Like, just, you know, how do you make something retroactive, like law, to, you know, to say something was was classified at a time it wasn't classified? I mean, it's like, it's outrageous.
Well, they believe they can bamboozle the American public. That's all. Or else they figure they have so much power, they're arrogant about it. They don't really care.
Yeah, that seems quite evident that, you know, their egos have really ballooned into this, you know, into the stratosphere that and you know, and what go ahead.
Yeah, I basically called it on television. I was debating Bob Dietz, who was a former senior lawyer over here at NSA, on Al Jazeera. And I called basically what he was doing and everybody else, what they were doing was treason against the founding principles of this nation.
Yep.
He had no response to that either.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Because when you challenge them out in the open, in public, they can't account for their actions. I mean, it's just not something that they want to admit openly or deal with.
And, you know, since you have been speaking out, you know, because this is, you know, going on like a few years now, I mean, they're not curtailing what they do in the least. I mean, they're actually expanding. You know, again, I believe the last time I spoke to you too, I think they were in the process of building a larger facility in Bluffdale, Utah.
And after they finish that one, they're starting a new one over here in Fort Meade. It's close to 3 times the size of that one. I
mean, that's really scary that, you know, business is booming for them because like you say, you know, you say that the more problems there are, the more money they get. So they are not in the business of curtailing terrorism or anything like that. It's exactly the opposite.
Well, that's the point. Solving the problem takes away the problem for them to get money.
You know, I mean, like that fits along with, because, you know, for some years now, I've been trying to point out and share with people the fact that money equals debt. I mean, that it is literally created out of debt. And this just sort of like, you know, illustrates that quite, you know, quite terrifyingly. So in order to get all this money, they need to have and create problems of threatening the security of this country. I mean, you said that the NSA sold out the American people for money.
Yes. And also all the allies and friends we have around the world, too.
And you call it go ahead.
But I was going to say, but they've been joined in their process by all the Five Eyes, the English-speaking countries, and also by a number of other countries in Europe and probably in Asia. So, I mean, they're being joined in this effort by at least 8 other countries that I know of from the Snowden material.
Do you think Edward Snowden should come back to this country?
No. No, he can't. He'll never get a fair trial.
Exactly.
He can't come back.
They want to give him the death penalty.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So let's. I made a little bit of notes here, and Jeffrey Sterling is in jail. Essentially, he doesn't belong there. John Kiriakou did time in jail for whistleblowing on torture. Chelsea Manning has a ridiculous sentence of like 35 years. They almost put Thomas Drake in jail under the Espionage Act.
They also tried to do that with us.
Right. Yes. Again, like I know you tell this story quite often. About, like what it felt like to have, it was the FBI that came to your house with guns drawn.
Yeah.
And luckily you didn't have to go to jail.
Well, I got evidence of them falsifying evidence for the charges they were making against us. And so that's called prima facie evidence of malicious prosecution. So I was going to charge them with that when they took us to court, and they dropped everything and ran away.
And I mean, is it possible to sue them over that?
No, because see, they didn't actually take any action. Excuse me. When I told them I had all the evidence, and I made it clear that I was going to charge them, they just dropped everything and ran away.
But the fact that they falsified stuff, I mean, that's not. They can't.
Oh, well, that's See, that. But they never took any action on the falsification. Somebody in the DOJ felt very bad about what they were doing to us, and so they sent us a copy of their draft indictment of us. And it just laid out all the lies that they were telling about, and it was easy to prove that they were lies. So that's why they dropped everything and ran away.
And so there's also a program called Stellar Wind that is a massive NSA spying.
That's domestic U.S. spying, yeah.
And I mean, so like, what are they planning on just doing with all of the information that they're collecting? You talk about that the reason that they're doing this is complete population control.
Yeah, well, it's like what they did with the Party, or what they did with the Occupy group, or what they did to Elliot Spitzer or Generals Allen or or what they do to anybody that doesn't fit the narrative coming from the White House and their spin and their positions on things. So, for example, religious groups trying to get politically active in a conservative way, they don't want that, so they slow roll them with the IRS. Or like Nixon did with the Minaret program in NSA and the COINTELPRO at FBI and chaos at CIA. Those three agencies were doing this before with Nixon, only on a much smaller scale. But he got impeached for that. Nobody's paying any price now. There's no accountability. So that was the same thing. Again, they were looking at people who were opposing the war in Vietnam and those who were politically opposing the administration at the time. You use this stuff for political purposes too. I mean, as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, right, like they're collecting all of this data to really like kind of make you a criminal in advance, like, because they know that the people are going to be uprising because, I mean, they're getting so expansive, the NSA and, I'm just going to include like banks and corporations that just keep expanding and trampling on the rest of the people that basically are getting crushed to death because they don't have any room to exist. And so exactly like, the little guy, the average person doesn't even have any right to exist.
You don't even have a chance to fight this, even in court, because it costs a lot to do that. It costs a lot of money to go to court.
So when you're traveling around and giving these talks, and the people want to know what they can do, what is the...
Well, I mean, one of the first steps we have is we have a film coming out about me and the other NSA whistleblowers, and it's called A Good American, and it's being circulated now in screenings in different festivals. But it'll come out later this year, I think, in early September. And it basically says, we need to get an effort together to unredact the DoD IG report on the FinThread program. First of all, this is like the first step to show the underlying malicious corruption and fraud and waste that's going on in the intelligence community, and how they manipulate people, and how they manipulate the Congress and all. So that's all in there. And that needs to come out so that people know how, and basically they know what they're dealing with. Right now they don't know, because nobody knows this, because it's all speculation, and nobody wants to believe it because they want to trust their government. Well, that's the wrong way to be.
Exactly.
I mean, the first thing you can't do is trust them. I mean, the first thing you have to do is assume they're lying to you.
Right.
I mean, and that's basically what's been going on. So the problem has been to get that kind of information out. It's documented in the IG's report. So that's the government's research of its own activity.
Right.
So it would be clear to get that going. So that's one of the first things to do. And then the next thing to do is start putting pressure on all your politicians to once they force them to look at this report and see what's going on, then to force them to stop it.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to have some solid foundation to work with, and that certainly is in the Department of Defense's Inspector General report. So that's our main focus right now. But later on, it's to do the political thing of shutting down all this bulk acquisition and bulk collection and spying on everybody.
Right.
Which is, a violation of the First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments of the Constitution, at least.
I've probably brought this up before when I interviewed Hugh, because I get really irritated when I ride the subway here in New York City and I hear those announcements about the NYPD having the right to check, your bag or your large containers or whatever. And I look around, and of course, because, if you see something, say something, type thing. And I try to read the responses of the people on their faces, because I literally have to say something, and I say things out loud in the subway, not really loud, but enough that maybe the people around me can hear, and I'll just say not without a warrant or something like that, just to, even if I could instill in a couple of people sitting next to me that they do not have the right to do that. Most people's attitude will be, right, we have to watch out for terrorists, so, I'm going to let them, check my bag.
Well, you see, the problem there is what they've been doing is saying, this is the basic lie they've been telling from the beginning, is that you have to give up your privacy to get security, and that's been a lie from the beginning. And the problem is that when they do this bulk acquisition and bulk collection of data, that basically destroys your security. But it opens you up eventually to any kind of investigation against you if they want to use that against you. So in essence, what it means is they're trading your security for money to do this bulk acquisition. And every time something happens and people die, they say, we need more money, we need more data, we need more people. And all that is perpetuating the underlying problem, which is they have too much data yet, and they should be focusing on known targets instead of doing everybody on the planet. So that fundamentally also means that occasionally some of us have to die to keep that process going.
Oh, yeah. And so I also kind of wanted to just point out, too, what happened in Flint. I mean, the whole city is poisoned by their own government, not terrorists.
That's right. Yeah, I was asked on Reddit once. I was on Reddit once with a lot of help from other people because I don't know how to do that. But they asked, what did I view as the greatest danger to the people of the United States, citizens? And I said, well, I thought it was the U.S. government. Simply because they're doing all this stuff to us, and we're getting no return from it, and they're just taking away our rights and privileges as they go along. So we are in fact losing our democracy because of our own government.
Right. I've been saying a lot of this stuff since the 70s myself. Nobody listened to me. So is there two movies? There's The Good American, and then there's also Oliver Stone's movie called Snowden.
Right. Yes, I think the film Snowden will be set by. I mean, if you looked at the film A Good American, it gives you the foundation of why Snowden did what he did, and I think it would give a greater understanding and emphasis to Oliver Stone's movie, The Snowden. It would give a bit greater understanding to seeing why he did what he did.
And I just wanted to kind of clear up, too, because a lot of people are, they're familiar with Edward Snowden as being the one who did expose the NSA spying, but you actually were before Edward Snowden. You just didn't have the documents. Is that
right? I started, opposing it in 2001 when they started it.
You inspired Edward Snowden, didn't you?
Yeah, I think he said at one point that he did what he did because of what they were doing to us. Meaning all of us, all the NSA whistleblowers, not just me.
I got Tom Drake gave me an email to write to Edward Snowden to see if he could be via Skype at the Left Forum, but I didn't get a reply. I mean, of course, I didn't think so, but I thought it would be at least a good thing to try to have him, be at the Left Forum and address, these things and speak out about this, because a lot of people, like the Left Forum is this really, really large conference that's happening not this weekend, but about it. Like there's like thousands of people. But anyway,
I'll be in Poland, so I can't be there.
And so so you're going to go. You've won awards. You won the highest distinction award while working for the NSA, Meritorious Civilian Service Award.
No, that was Kirk. I got the Director's Productivity Awards and various other awards. I didn't get the meritorious one. That's what Kirk Weeby got that.
And how does it feel after 30 years of working for the NSA to see them take the direction that they're taking?
Well, I just thought it was absolutely criminal. I mean, that's totally against the founding principles of that agency and our country. So, how else can you feel but betrayed by the leadership and the management of NSA and the White House?
And the people that didn't take the direction that you take, like the people that you worked with that just, are going along with the NSA.
Well, internally in NSA, they have their own terrorism program running inside NSA. That's where they intimidate and threaten the workforce. And they also have instituted a see something, say something in the workforce, meaning if one member of the workforce sees some other member that's doing something that maybe they don't think is, appropriate, then they're supposed to tip off security for them to investigate them. So it's just like the Stasi did in East Germany. It's the same way they operated.
And the idea that people have, that they don't want to believe that their government would do these things. The simple thing. I mean, they're human beings. I mean,
right.
And I mean the fact that also, I mean, the system is limited. The planet is limited. I mean, you're going to run out of space eventually, and it's just like the corporations and the banks. I mean, their unlimited lust for profit. I mean, the fact that they make it a crime now to interfere with corporate profit. I mean, this is like insanity.
Well, it's how you, what I say is that's how you control the population.
It's definitely beyond George Orwell.
No, but this is the kind of activity that made it possible for J. Edgar Hoover to stay in office for 40 years almost, you know? I mean, that was having power over people, which is information and knowledge about them. That's power. That gives you the ability to coerce them into anything or threaten them directly or indirectly into, doing or permitting you to do whatever you want to do, which is what that's the way it's really going down here.
So, I mean, then it stands to reason that the public is going to live in like a permanent state of basically being choked, really.
Yeah.
More and more over time. I mean, you said that. I mean, right? Like you're using the people are losing their freedoms, and just like Flint. So it's not some terrorist that's taking the freedoms and rights away from the public. It's your own government that's doing it.
That's why I put it down as the great threat to the citizens of the United States. Yeah.
And it's for their own good, though.
Well, that's what they say, but it really isn't, okay? I mean, the point is that people have to die to keep going what they're doing. So, I mean, they need to stop. I mean, I was advocating that every time a terrorist attack succeeds, we should cut their budget $1 billion a year. Every year, every time, every one of those things happen, you cut their budget. That way, it'll force them to focus, and it'll force them to get away from this bulk acquisition, because bulk acquisition takes a lot of money to do.
I mean, it stands to reason that, giving, the NSA, like, all of this money is going to, it sounds like that's the idea, that they want to expand terrorism. It seems that they want to create the problems. They want to expand terrorism. That's what they're using the money to do. I mean, that's what it's doing.
That's the result of it, yeah.
And I mean, like I've interviewed a lot of people in just like the time that I've been doing this radio show, and so many people that I talk to who write articles, and they're professors at colleges on Middle Eastern studies and things like that. Like they'll talk about how, the military being over there in the Middle East, I mean, and the drone program is creating more terrorism, and they're funding, people like ISIS and all of that stuff, because the weapons industries are making so much money.
Yeah, or else they get it funded through the Saudis or other Arab countries, yeah.
And speaking of the Saudis, I wanted to bring up the, HR14.org and releasing the 28 pages.
Yep.
I mean, that is actually supposed to become a reality, and until Saudi Arabia started threatening to liquidate the U.S. Treasury, or I forget exactly the detail. That
they owe, or they have of our Treasury bills. Yeah.
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 And
they wanted to dump it on the market to destroy the dollar, I guess.
And because Senator Walter Jones, there's other names that I know that, of course, when I need to retrieve them, Senator Bob Graham, Senator Walter Jones, and I even believe Rand Paul are calling for the release of the 28 pages because it kind of implicates who funded the 9/11 hijackers, most of which came from Saudi Arabia.
That's right. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily, I think, show the participation by the Saudi government per se, but it does show fairly high members in their royal family and others that are participating in supporting terrorism.
Exactly. I mean, it's a business.
So,
Like
well, I mean, they just don't want the truth out. That's all.
Right. So let's. You said that the thin thread could have prevented 9/11, and so like the government could have prevented 9/11 and they didn't.
That's right.
And so like I just keep thinking about like after the trade centers got attacked, like so and where was the Air Force and things like that. So even after it occurred, they didn't seem to just start moving in and trying to intercept. Like they would slow to act even afterwards.
Well, I think they tried, but I think they went the wrong way or something. I don't know what it was, but I'm not sure about the exact thing that happened there. But I think they did attempt to do something, but it was not effective. That's for sure.
And Building 7 also, that a lot of people aren't aware, also fell into its own footprint that day.
Well, you see, that's one of the reasons I signed a petition to have another investigation of that, simply because there were so many aspects of it that were observable that were ignored by the NIST investigators when they went into it. I mean, it was scientifically, I would call it a very sloppy job. I mean, and when you ignore facets instead of even addressing them, I mean, you make everybody suspicious. You've got all hidden agendas as to why you're doing it.
Yep.
And the point is, if they had observable things that were occurring, and if they couldn't understand them or couldn't explain them, I think it's just fair enough to say, well, we saw this, but we don't know what it means or how to explain it. That's fair enough,
Right.
If you don't know how to do something, that's fine. That's okay. I don't see anything wrong with saying that. But the problem is, I think they don't want to admit that they can't explain everything. Right. It's like they feel they have to be able to explain it, or otherwise they're not competent. Well, by not explaining it, that tells me they're not competent.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They think the fact that they're trying to hide it doesn't show, but it actually shows even more.
Yeah, it does, and it makes them more suspicious as to what they are or are not doing. So,
I mean, Rich, go ahead.
I was just saying the problem is that they need to be open and honest with everybody, and that's what they're having difficulty doing. They can't be honest with each other. So,
exactly.
And it's not that hard to do. I mean, it's fairly simple.
Yeah, like
just tell the truth.
Exactly. I mean, do you think it's like it's kind of that simple, like that they just, I mean, because a lot of people are like that. Like they just have a really hard time admitting that they don't know or that they made a mistake. And then, of course, you try to cover up and hide that mistake. And it's just a debt perpetuation, and then they use the money to just keep covering things up.
That's right, yeah. And I think that's pretty much the way of most of the intelligence agencies. They can't admit they have a problem. So, I liken it to an alcoholic that can't admit he's an alcoholic. And if you can't do that, you can't solve your problem.
That's exactly right.
And so what ends up is, all the problems they have just keep perpetuating themselves because they cannot face them.
And this is becoming, because just a couple of weeks ago, Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, I interviewed him back in December. And he was here in New York, and he spoke at the New School, and he is just basically saying the same exact thing as you are about the IMF, about the German banks and the German government. Because these are his words. I videotaped his talk at the New School. It's on my YouTube channel, April Waters with double T. And he says that, he meets with the IMF. He thinks, he's going to meet with these people. The little boy in him wants to believe that the good adults at the IMF know what they're doing. Like the people, that's like normal, I guess, And they admit that they know the math does not work. but they are too invested to turn back now. And they basically just tell him, you could join us, be on the inside and be lucrative, or be an outsider and speak truth to power. And, we're not changing.
Yeah, that's basically the procedure for just about everybody. All the governments around the world, as well as the corporations. I don't see that's kind of a human failing.
Yeah, so it's like
humans have to behave that way. I guess I don't. It's not really rational. I don't understand how people do that.
I think it's human conditioning. I think. I don't want to. I was a psych major, so that's why I really. Because everything is ultimately it's not political, it's not economic, it's not terrorist or whatever. It literally ends up coming down to health. It's like a health issue and human relationships and dysfunctional relationships.
Yeah, it's fundamentally what we have is a bunch of dysfunctional relationships here.
Yeah, exactly. Like the dysfunctional family, only on this really, really large scale.
That's right. Yep.
And so also the NDAA, which back in 2012, Tom Drake was here. Daniel Ellsberg was here in Lower Manhattan because they were all going to and involved in the lawsuit. Chris Hedges is involved in it. I believe Noam Chomsky also is, but he wasn't here in person. Tangerine Bolin, and I'm not sure I don't think Jesselyn Radak was there, but they were suing the Obama administration over. Of course, they lost over the NDAA and section. I think it's 1022. Can you talk about that?
1021, yeah. That's the one with basically says exactly what Special Order 48 does of the Nazis in 1933. That's where it says that they have the right to detain anyone under suspicion indefinitely without due process. That was issued right after the Reichstag fire in Nazi Germany by the Nazis in 1933. And it says exactly the same thing. You can go on the web and look it up, and you can read about it, and it says exactly what that section does in the NDAA. So, it tells you that we are just sliding down this totalitarian path. That's all.
I just wanted to mention I was planning on having people can call in at 917-947-9036. I was speaking with economist James Henry earlier today. He said he was going to try to call. We're definitely moving towards a totalitarian police state.
Right. That's right. All the things are in place for that to happen. You just have to, they're just not putting. They're going after people, in different ways, but they're not putting them in sanitariums or in the gulags yet.
It's really, it's scary. There's no question about it. Just before you came on at 6 o'clock, I was interviewing one of the Central Park Five. Speaking of a police state, so they're on a march. They started on Sunday, on Mother's Day, from New York City, Upper New York City to Albany. Trying to bring awareness for those that are wrongfully incarcerated, and that was a really. And there's so many stories like that. Albert Woodfox and these men that spent decades in solitary confinement for things that they didn't even do. There's no.
Yeah, that's the criminal part of it that needs to be addressed. No one's held accountable for that either. That's the problem I have. There's no accountability in this country anymore, and so that all our politicians or people in agency heads think they can do anything they want, and they never will be held accountable. That's where I say we should draw the line and put these people in jail.
Exactly. You also said too about the people that are, doing this stuff, that they don't believe that they are going to suffer the consequences. Like they won't.
Well, I would also say that so far they're right.
Yeah. I mean,
so far they've got the power. That's the point.
It is the public that needs to stand up and hold them accountable. I mean, that's
That's right.
Like I'm always saying, natural law, trumps man's law, because again, what people don't realize, they're so busy, they get all caught up working and going after money and following man's laws, and what they don't realize is happening is man's laws are being so diluted, money is being so diluted and diverted away from just truth, justice, and natural law. And we have to really get back in touch with natural law and have man's law be in alignment with reality and natural law.
Well, that's the point. We need to have certain. If our laws are going to be laws, I mean, we need to make them laws and make sure that they're followed. That's the real problem. I mean, when you don't have accountability, you don't really have law. And so that means you fundamentally have people at the top. The more power you have, the more you have the ability to do, and so they just simply start to do whatever they want to, regardless of what the law says. And that's what's happening, for example, with all this email business. Those are really critical. And here now we have the Russians saying that they're threatening to release the thousands of emails of hers that they've got. So that means they hacked into to her server and had all that email there too. So
wait, whose server?
The point is, Hillary Clinton's server.
Okay.
So the point is, if you're going to have laws governing management of classified information and so on, I mean, after all, they sent Chelsea Manning to jail for 35 years doing that. But that was at a much lower level. This is like at the highest levels of the diplomatic department. So there's a lot of covering up for people who are at the top by people at the top. So my point is pretty simple. If we're going to have the law, we should implement it equally and justly across the board for everybody.
Yeah, I mean that. I believe that it's the people in power. They need to be held to higher standards. I mean, they're the people in power. I mean, we should be expecting more from them, and instead it's like the other way around. And meanwhile, they'll put 16-year-olds in a jail for a year for jumping a turnstile.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For $2.75. I mean, the jails are getting more and more filled here with juveniles, with 16-year-olds.
Well, but you see, they can put them to work there and get a lot of money out of that, and that's fundamentally what in the private prisons. That's what they're doing.
Exactly.
And nobody's holding them accountable either.
Right. I did bring it up with Yusef Salam in the previous hour about the Correctional Corporation of America and all of the private prisons that are coming up. I would imagine that with the expansion of the NSA, like you said, they're the one that's in Bluffdale, Utah, and the new one that they're opening in Fort Meade. So, right, I mean, that would kind of have to mean that more prisons are going to open.
And remember, it's a matter of getting enough. The more people you put in prison, the more money you can make. So, that's the real problem. So.
Yeah, it's pretty. People just don't want to believe this kind of stuff.
Well, they don't want to believe it can happen here in the United States, but they just are too naive to. They're too naive to face the truth. That's all.
Which is why I always go back to health. I mean, if you don't keep something in shape, if you don't exercise something, if you don't exercise your rights, if you don't exercise your body, I mean, you're going to lose it. So, not only is it going likely to happen, the people, by adopting these attitudes that they have, they're actually ensuring that it's going to happen.
Yeah, and the other point I would make is that democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to participate
Exactly.
to ensure you have it. Otherwise, you're in jeopardy of losing it. And that's really what's happening now.
You know, the people really, like, they need to find and empower themselves.
They have more power than they realize. That's the point.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you also said that the NSA does not get audited.
That's right. Nor does CIA or any of the intelligence agencies. Yeah.
You know, again, like there's another, the powers that be are exempt from the laws that the rest of them.
I also just signed a petition to request the auditing of the Department of Defense. That's not audited either. So the point is there's whole segments of our government that aren't held accountable as to how they spend money. And as a part of the Department of Defense, under the funding, is NSA. So NSA is under DOD for funding, but it's a national agency otherwise. So it's kind of double rolled. You know, it's got a military component and it also has a national, international component too.
I heard you say something about Angela Merkel and how she's related to all of this.
Well, I think she basically had approved the B&D NSA relationship. I mean, she had to, otherwise it wouldn't have occurred. That's where the B&D is collecting data even on their own citizens and sharing it with NSA. That's what I say. There's more countries involved than just us, and we've been subverting all of them. So I looked at this as a metastasizing malignancy that the intelligence communities are spreading throughout the world and destroying democracies everywhere.
Exactly. You know, this is why, I feel like, the good people like you need to team up, you need to team up with like a Yanis Varoufakis or something, to, all you people that are standing up and saying no, like all the people that are standing up and saying no.
We are trying to get that together with a collection of privacy advocating groups and civil liberties groups. We're trying to do that in D.C. and it's being headed by people in the D.C. area who've been working politically in this area for quite some time. So they're kind of leading the charge here, or helping to lead the charge, and we're trying to assist them any way we can. So we're really teaming up, and hopefully we can get things moving in the right direction. I mean, the whole idea is, of course, to make sure that these things are exposed for what they are and their ineffectiveness and the incompetence and stupidity of the leadership of this country and what they're doing, and how they're bamboozling everybody and making them pay for all it. So we in the end are paying for everything. So it's a matter of exposing all this and then holding everybody accountable and doing something about it.
I mean,
not just talking.
Right. Yeah. They really are cowards, right? The people that are running things into the ground.
That's right. Yep, that's true.
And so the things like the attacks in Paris and also like the Boston bombing and things like that, like, is that like allowed to happen or?
Well, I mean, because of the approach they've taken, they're forcing it. That's the ultimate consequence of what they're doing. I mean, if you take too much data in, you can't find the data that would indicate a threat's coming in advance. So you can't find it before the attack, but after the attack, you find out who did it, and then you've got all this data on them. So, but if you looked at it and watched it over time, every time there's been an attack, afterward they all said, "Oh yeah, we knew these guys. These were bad guys. They had connections with this terrorist group or that one." And it was a matter of, we knew them, but, we couldn't find the data in advance. So, and the problem is they've got too much data to look at. And that means you can't find the threat in advance, and so you can't stop it, which means ultimately the consequence is people die first, and then they go after the people who did it. with lots of information on it. But that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is you're supposed to save lives, not let them die. You know, that's that's the consequence of all these decisions they made.
This is, I mean, you got to really kind of let this stuff sink in. So the Good American, that comes out in September, you said.
Publicly released, I think, in September, yeah.
And then the Snowden movie by Oliver Stone comes out in December, I believe, Christmas or the day after.
Yeah, I thought I don't know exactly when he's going to release that, but it may be late September, as early as that. I'm not sure. I mean, you have to. If he's announced it, I haven't heard it yet. That's all.
And just kind of getting back to 9/11. So basically, you're saying that the government allowed it to happen, or they had.
Yeah, that's basically right. Yeah.
And so people like Sibel Edmonds on the Boiling Frogs post, who also was saying that the government had information about and knew about 9/11. And so that is pretty much the extent of their involvement. I mean, this country didn't fund the terrorists or things like that. They just knew about it and allowed it.
Well, they knew the entire terrorist network, or virtually all of it, and by not following it, that basically meant that they were just ignoring it. The consequences, they're allowing it to happen, so it happened.
And why? Why would they do that?
It's a mixture of things. They didn't want to change the way they did business, which meant that they wanted analyst people to look at data to make decisions, so they could say this person made the decision. You know, instead of having software look into it to detect things that are important and then pushing them at people. So instead of doing it in an autumn or semi-automated way to make sure that information wasn't lost or hidden or buried in data, they took the approach of having people required as a part of the process. That doomed them to failure, especially when they started collecting massive amounts of information. So when you do that, your people, you just can't cope. It's not possible to cope with it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned Richard Nixon and this program called Minaret, and then you also talk about COINTELPRO and something called Chaos.
Yep, yeah. Those are the three programs run by at the request of the White House, Nixon's White House, to go after people who were opposed to war in Vietnam or people who were opposing the positions of the White House. And those were the three programs that were set up in secret again, like the ones of now are in secret, right? So they do this as a standard. When you're committing a criminal act, you got to keep it secret. So that's what they're doing, keeping the criminal act secret. And it's exactly what they've been doing to date. I mean, that's their whole objective was to keep everything out of the public domain so that nobody knew what was happening. And they could, in essence, do in secret anything they wanted to. So that's the real problem that's going on here, and nobody's really addressing that either.
I mean, there's so many the media, which is part of the reason why I started to do this radio show is because you're always hearing people talk about how you don't hear about this stuff on mainstream media. And I don't have any corporate money to do this. I mean, there's no commercials or anything like that. So I would like it if people utilized. I mean, if people have something to say, just let me know, and we have a good 2 hours to talk about things, with no problems. And I wanted to mention a group called No Separate Justice, which meets the first Monday of every month down in Lower Manhattan at 150 Park Lane or Park Place at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. because they're calling that facility kind of New York's like Guantanamo. It's also like Rikers Island. And the people who, there's a lot of people from the Center for Constitutional Rights, attorneys from the Center for Constitutional Rights that run it. And they talk about how the FBI sort of like takes advantage of some like vulnerable Middle Eastern people and tries to set them up like to be to do terrorist acts.
Yeah, that's been their success, the so-called success. They entrap people into doing things. Yeah.
Right. So things like the Boston bombing also. Is it possible that those two young brothers pulled that off by themselves and weren't helped?
Well, I'm sure they were helped because they took one of the brothers took over to the Middle East there and he got some training there in Chechnya or something. Russians warned us about that, beforehand. They warned us about these guys coming back. They were a threat. And of course they didn't. They put them on a list. Yeah, we know them. And so they knew they were communicating with. So they were known. And again, this is what Thinthread would have picked out. Anything they did electronically would have been surfaced right up front, or any bit of data they had about them in any form coming in from travel or coming in from anything else. If they had that data, it would be picked up and alerted immediately. So none of the data would have been hidden. So no one could basically say ignore it because they wouldn't. Also, Thinthread would have removed the possibility of looking at the rest of the people on the planet because it removed all that data up front. We never took it in, so they never had it, or would never have it to waste their time. So in other words, if they did interrogations into databases, you wouldn't have all the information on the other 4 billion people on the planet with electronic devices, and they wouldn't be able to see the data and waste their time on on what they were doing. So they had to focus. The whole idea was to force them to focus on known terrorists and anything in a zone of suspicion around them based on behavior. And, that was the whole point of FinTech.
It's clear what their agenda is, and it's not, the agenda is not safety or national security or...
No, it's money. And in fact, that's one of the quotes that came out of the movie. If you watch the movie, you'll see that quote came in. And after 9/11, one of the things the senior manager there at NSA said, 9/11 is a gift to NSA because now we'll get all the money we ever needed or wanted.
And just the last couple of minutes, I just wanted to spend, seeing is that, they are listening in, how do they, pick people to put on their, most wanted list or whatever it is?
I think part of it is what kind, if you're a journalist, what kind of journalism you do, what subjects you're interested in publishing information about, and for example, Jim Risen or the people like Jim would be targets because they're interested in national security and they publish things about it, and so those are things they don't want published, so they want to monitor them, so they'd be targets right away to find out more importantly who they were communicating with, which would mean those were their potential leakers, and so they'd go after them and try to stop the leaking. And that's pretty much true of all most reporters. They watch. I think most reporters are being watched for that reason. That means that's the way you control the population and the leaking of information. That is, the official leaks are the only leaks they're supposed to have. So, that's according to the current and basically the previous administrations.
So then, clearly then, good, decent, smart people with integrity like yourself, Tom Drake, John Kiriakou, Edward Snowden, Yanis Varoufakis. So the brightest and healthiest people are being marginalized, which...
Well, yeah, and targeted and marginalized in any way they can do that, yeah.
And then, I mean, then that would kind of stand to reason too, that in order to have money and pay your bills in a lot of, places where people work, that you can't be a smart, good, decent, outspoken person if you want to keep your job.
Yeah, and if you want to, that's the whole point. That's what they're depending on. That if everybody's threatened that way, like for example, some people who knew Tom Drake and maybe had talked to him after he's been indicted or in the process, why those people got fired just because they contacted him.
Exactly.
So I mean that's how you threaten the workforce, right? That's how you keep them in line. That's how you keep people doing what you want them to do.
See,
and that's population control.
Yeah, see, that's what really scares me the most, is that it's going to be the people that that create the people that are the low-hanging fruit, the most vulnerable, that end up in these prisons because exactly they want to keep their job. Those are the people that scare me even more than the people at the top. Is, the average person who, wants to keep their job and they're willing to throw, their neighbor under the bus.
Well, you see, that was the same story in East Germany and the Stasi, and also with the KGB and MVD in the Soviet Union, and the SS and the Gestapo in Germany during the 30s and 40s. And it goes back in history. I mean, it goes all the way back. So to Caesar Augustus and various people before him. So that's human nature, I guess. And the way humans operate when they collectively pull together into a city-state or a state or a country. So whenever you people get organized, this is kind of an internal failing in how people treat each other.
Yeah, it's really scary. And we have 50 seconds left. So I'm just going to talk about a website that you contribute to called exposefacts.org. And people can find...
Yeah, it's an organization that's started up to try to assist whistleblowers in blowing the whistle and keep their identities anonymous. And they're setting up ways to try to make that possible to happen. Also, they advocate for whistleblowers and also support whistleblowers. So it's an organization trying to sustain getting the truth out. I mean, after all, the only reason we know anything we do about what our government's doing nowadays is because of whistleblowers, not because of the press. The press is being suppressed, if you will. So we no longer really have a free press in that sense, nor an investigative reporting operation in it. So whistleblowers are the only way we can really get the truth out. And they're organized to support them in that process.
And also go to my YouTube channel, April Waters with 2 T's, and please donate to my journalism and helping me keep this radio program going. So thank you so much, Mr. Binney. I hope I meet you again in person soon.
Okay, well, maybe that'll happen then.
Yeah, thank you for speaking out.
No, thank you.
Okay, stay safe.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I think I am, my time is over. I hope I don't know if I got cut off yet or not, but, yes, please help me keep, organic news going. This is, it's crazy. We need help and funding. Please donate. On my YouTube channel, please, and or at the Awake Radio #1 where my podcasts are. Thank you, and don't sell yourself and your neighbor out for money. Good night.